Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 453, June 6th, 2018, Wednesday. You know what I do on Wednesday? Take out the trash and eat some chicken. Alrighty, unbelievable breaking news today. Let's see. Yes, let's start here. I guess most of you have already seen this. There's really two new emails that have been released, but the one I want to focus on is the one that clearly proves just more evidence that the investigation began long before 2016. It wasn't really even an FBI investigation at all, as I've pointed out in recent videos. But in this particular email, what we see is proof that they were actually implanting multiple spies long before 2016. You can see these emails on Conservative Treehouse and many other sites. They're everywhere. I'm sure many of you have already looked at them, so you can see. And let's look at the most important thing, which is the date and who it is that we're talking about in these emails. So the date of these emails is December the 28th, 2015. December 28th, 2015. They were having the following email conversation. You have, it's essentially Peter's been stroking us talking to Lisa Page. And she responds. So he uses the term, he says, basically, did you get approval on those Econos lures? Now, Econos is basically means it means outside contiguous U.S. In other words, anyone outside the United States. Basically, what he's saying is, did you get approval on our outside spies, outside the U.S.? So he's using the word spies, so he's talking about more than one, and he's talking about outside the U.S., and that perfectly would describe Mr. Halper, probably Mr. Downer, and probably Mr. Mifsud, would be my guess. Could be anyone else, but we're pretty sure that those will be three leading candidates. And then, of course, Lisa Page responds back to Peter's been stroking us by saying, no, it's just implicated a much bigger policy issue. I'll explain later. So apparently in December 28th, 2015, Peter's been stroking us is trying to get approval regarding this topic, trying to get outside contiguous U.S. spies. He uses the word lures, but lures essentially means like you lure a fish or you lure someone into a trap. That's what he's talking about, the spy. And in this case, he says spies. So he's talking about more than one spy. There you go. Hard evidence. McCabe and certainly Priestep, I would think, would know about this. I don't see how he could not know about this. McCabe, of course, is definitely in the mix because Peter's been stroking us. Seemed to run everything through McCabe. Just seemed to be the route he liked to take things. There's a lot more communication between Peter's been stroking us and McCabe than there is with Priestap, or not much at all with Comey directly. So far, we've seen in the texts. Unbelievable. James Comey is mentioned as a CC in one of the emails. But amazing that this actually started back in December 28th, 2015 is when they're trying to get approval, I guess, to use these outside spies. Obviously, they got approval. Unbelievable. More hardcore evidence. I mean, and these documents actually were actually released once before. But when they were released before, there were redactions. So the word lures was redacted. And possibly even the Oconus, which is, he uses that in the email, but it means outside contiguous U.S. Oconus, O-C-O-N-U-S. Unbelievable. I mean, that's smoking gun evidence, just to go along with many other forms of smoking gun evidence, that they had spies in the campaign, that they were running an operation, and that it was not an operation being run by the FBI because their investigation didn't begin until 2016 of July the 31st, and Nunes and the boys are still looking for the cause, the probable cause that was used to begin the investigation. They can't find that. But as soon as they start looking around over there at that 6-agency task force being run in the bowels of the CIA at Langley, Virginia, I think that they will begin to find where the operation that we're looking at was actually, that's the operation that we're looking at here. The operation for the FBI in July of 2016 was merely just to serve the interest of the underlying action that was happening at the time, to get FISA warrants and various other forms of surveillance legally on U.S. citizens, which the other group could not do. So that is basically what we're looking at there based on this. Again, my oh my. Let's move on. Yes, as of this moment, pre-step, it is 8:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Pre-step is still in the meeting, still in the hearing. It's been 7 hours and counting. Catherine Herridge has been camped out outside the room. It's a closed hearing, but sources who've been in and out of the meeting have told Herridge that pre-step is cooperating, meaning he's answering questions. Herridge has learned that Strzok played a major or a more important role than previously known. What does that mean? Pre-step is throwing Strzok under the bus. Can't wait to hear who Strzok is going to throw under the bus. I have a pretty good idea. So Strzok played a more important role than previously known, specifically in the Clinton email investigation. Of course, he was one of the ones who interviewed the Right Reverend Clinton. Sources are suggesting that Strzok was working around his boss. Yeah, so pre-steps in the hearing saying they're working around me. That's basically what this is all coming from. So pre-steps reporting directly to McCabe, and then some extent to James Baker, who's of course the chief legal counsel. So basically, Strzok was pre-step is essentially saying in these hearings that that Strzok was going around him, working with McCabe, and to some extent James Baker. So this is how pre-step's playing it, like I'm just sitting there at the #1 position in counterintelligence, doing my job every day, and I have no idea an entire coup is going on around me. I'm completely in the dark. But I went over to London to do some shopping for my wife. Okay, we'll see what comes out of that. But in other words, basically the people that he's talking about are the small group. The small group. Also, we have another thing that developed out of these hearings so far, which are still going on, and that is that we're learning that one of the Gang of 8 members had sent a letter to Rodenstein to see if the president has been given intelligence information other than what they received in their briefing by John Brennan in 2016. And those 4 Democrats are Madam Botox Pelosi, Chucky Schumer, Adam, the bug-eyed fool Schiff, and Mr. Warner, who lied about his service in Vietnam. So there wasn't any. So anyway, there we go. Now, what's going on with this? Well, it's very simple. What we talked about a week or two ago. When Brennan briefed Nunes, he says he briefed all the Gang of 8 people individually. Okay, when he briefed Nunes, he gave Nunes a completely different briefing than he gave the bug-eyed fool Adam Schiff. You can bet on that. And now that's coming out because now Priestep is talking, and so Schiff is beginning to realize that it's going to come out that he knew about everything that was going on. Nunes has now figured out that John Brennan didn't level with him because of what he's learning now, and so basically the jig is up. So now Schiff and the other Democrats are trying to find out exactly how they should position themselves. They want to know if Trump now knows what he wasn't supposed to know, what Nunes wasn't supposed to know, that they actually knew. And so now they're in kind of a pickle, a political pickle for the most part. It could be embarrassing more than anything else. I don't think it's criminal, but it could be embarrassing. And would prove that they were kind of, they were withholding information from other members and the senior member of the Intelligence Committee, the Gang of Eight. That's Devin Nunes. He's like the number 2 guy, I guess you'd say. So, it's just more and more and more things unraveling. Clearly, Priestep in these hearings, it appears the leaks are coming out as they're happening. Priestep is clearly throwing McCabe and Strzok under the bus, and of course, he's pointing to the small group, which we've known for a long time. And of course, then they had that other little special group, both created by Comey. So what you have here is simply Priestep throwing McCabe and Strzok under the bus that James Comey is driving. How's that going to look? On the blotter report. Not very good. Could be messy. Very messy. And expensive legally speaking. Let's move forward. Well, it looks like McCabe has turned. I wasn't expecting it to happen that quickly. I thought we would have to wait for actual, charges, until he was actually charged. But he's not actually even going to wait till he's charged because he knows he's going to be charged. Okay, there's a U.S. attorney from the District of Columbia who's investigating him. There's no question he's guilty of quite a few things, and much, much more to come in the future. He was involved in everything. This is just dealing with the email issue. That's it. That's what the U.S. attorney is looking at, the lies, lying about what he did with the Wall Street Journal articles, whether Comey knew about it or not. Doesn't matter. The U.S. attorney is looking at him. Criminal referral from the Inspector General with most of the evidence already there. It's a no-brainer. So McCabe is clearly making every effort right now to cut a deal. He wants immunity. So now we can see the letters back and forth between Grassley and the attorney for McCabe show us what's going on. You can see those letters on Conservative Treehouse. So basically what the lawyer is doing is he's trying to cut an immunity deal for McCabe, but he has 2 issues. Well, 3 really. Number 1, he's got this U.S. attorney who is investigating, preparing to file charges soon. Something has to be done about that. He needs immunity, and that he's hoping will stop the investigation. But there's another issue, which is that apparently McCabe signed a non-disclosure agreement. And this is causing a problem, and it's also an issue because apparently from what the attorney is saying, the documents that will prove his client, McCabe, not guilty or innocent, or in this case, will prove that Comey knew about what McCabe was doing and approved of it, gave him the okay to do it, of leaking the story to the Wall Street Journal, creating the story, leaking the story, that type of thing. So anyway, the problem is that the attorney for McCabe is saying that they're not able to get the documents from the FBI. They're not coming off the documents that will show that Comey did in fact approve of what McCabe did. And apparently this NDA, this non-disclosure agreement, is creating problems there. So what McCabe's attorney is looking for is for Grassley to write a letter to the Attorney General, which would at this point be Rod Rodenstein for all practical purposes. Rodenstein would then, hopefully, this is what they're hoping for, McCabe's lawyer, hoping that Rodenstein would put the kibosh on the U.S. attorney in the District of Columbia, tell him to stop his investigation. They would grant McCabe immunity, and Rodenstein would cooperate with the attorney to find this document that would clear McCabe, that McCabe says exists, that shows that this conversations he had with Comey, where Comey approved of what he did. So that's where that stands. That's what the immunity deal is all about. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I don't know. I mean, at this point, the IG's report's coming out. Probably just about everything that we need to know is going to come out. A lot of things are going to come out anyway about McCabe and what he did. I mean, what's McCabe? I mean, after all this time, if he would have done it a year and a half ago, but to come clean, a week before, the report comes out, which is probably going to show us 90% of what he's going to tell us, and probably maybe more than that. I mean, so I don't know. I really don't know how that's going to go for McCabe's lawyer. Probably not very well, be my guess. So that's, but I expect, McCabe, if he's going to, when he's saying that he's looking for immunity, to testify, that means he's going to drop the dime on everyone or do what he said he would do, which is burn the effing thing down. So he's got the matches in his hand, and he is preparing to burn the effing thing down if they don't, get him off the hook, give him immunity, let him roll over on everybody else. Although it's just going to turn into a circular firing squad, because now you have McCabe, you'll have McCabe and Comey pointing the gun at each other. Then you'll have McCabe and ultimately Yates will be pointing the gun at each other because they're in dispute on something. Comey and Lynch are in dispute. You have all these disputes within this core group of people, the top two at the FBI and the top two at the DOJ. Lynch and Comey and McCabe and Yates. They're all kind of, it pretty much bottoms out at them, and they're all having to point the gun at each other, essentially. And that's where it's going to end up. It's there now, actually. Okay, we have more breaking news now. This is just actually happening just before I did this video. Let's see. This is from Paul Sperry. It appears that McCabe and Comey cleared Sally Yates to use Peter's been stroking us dubious 302 on Michael Flynn. And this was, of course, what was used to get Flynn fired. Now, what's the backstory behind this? It appears that Yates, what she actually used was a summary report or review, which is what she took to the White House of this interview with Flynn, to pressure them into feeling like they had to fire Flynn. But as it turns out, he was no longer or wasn't under investigation at that time. Isn't that amazing? So McCabe and Comey give the okay for Sally Yates to use a summary report as a fear tactic to apply heavy political pressure on the White House and make them think that something was really big in the wind. Here it comes. Better get rid of Flynn. As it turns out, he wasn't even under active investigation at that time. What does that mean? Well, that means obstruction of justice is history, Uncle Bob, because Trump couldn't be guilty of obstruction of justice in the Michael Flynn issue if, in fact, Flynn was not under investigation at the time that that meeting occurred and in the days afterwards, which is when, Trump's being accused of obstructing justice. He can't obstruct justice if the investigation was not active. So much for that, Uncle Bob. Try again. Something else. Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next one. That's good news. Boy, we're just winning a lot, aren't we? Well, we have Twitch McConnell, of course, working behind Trump's back with the other swampers there in D.C. To try and block Trump from imposing tariffs. Of course, what's actually happening here is, and he's being very successful, he's already had a lot of concessions from China. He's going to get concessions from Canada, Mexico, and Europe. They have no choice. So he's going to win. This is a negotiation. This is what these idiots, well, it's not that they don't understand it. They understand exactly what it is. They understand Trump's a hell of a negotiator, and that if he continues to play the cards he's playing, we'll have some short-term discomfort. Could cause a few issues here and there, but ultimately we're going to win, and we're going to get concessions and massively lower our trade deficit. Maybe cut it in half. It's over $800 billion. If we can get it down to half that in the next 3 to 4 years, that would be very good. That's $400 billion more dollars that stay inside the U.S., and that's good news. That's what Trump's trying to do. It's retransferring the wealth back to America. And see, the globalists don't like that. And that's who's behind Twitch McConnell. That is who Twitch McConnell serves. Those are his masters, his puppet masters. It's made up of DC lobbyists, multinational banks, Wall Street, big corporations, multinationals. They're the ones that are all behind. They get behind. They pump up the pressure, I guess you would say, in the least. The pressure, they pump up the pressure on people like Twitch because they own them. And that's what we got. So it does look like Trump or like Twitch McConnell. He's going to have that extended recess, but not because of the reason he says to get judges appointed and things and such. No, it's to give him time so that the Republicans and Democrats, swamp monsters, can get together and get enough votes to try to do something or build a consensus so that they attach it onto the back of another bill that Trump actually wants. So they give him that situation. Oh, if you want hey, maybe they'll do the wall. Yeah, we decided to do the wall, Mr. President. Here's the wall. Oh, and by the way, here's this. If you want the wall, you got to give us this. In other words, you got to stop any of the trade negotiations or threatening tariffs or applying tariffs or anything else. But this is a negotiation tactic, and it's working. We've already gotten quite a few concessions from China, and it's just a matter of time before Mexico and Canada will bend, and Europe as well. But Europe's a mess. You don't even care about Europe. Who cares? It's a mess over there, man. It really is. Oh boy, that EU is collapsing. It's just a matter of when, and it's all happening. It's all happening. Let's see. Oh yeah, you'll like this. We're learning now that Stephen Miller was also invited to the Cambridge event. This invitation was sent to him back in May of 2016. Miller declined. Also, it should be noted that we're learning now that the campaign told Carter Page, when they learned he was going to the Cambridge event, that they preferred he did not go. So that is kind of interesting. But I think he told them, well, I'm not speaking there, I'm just going there. So they didn't really want him speaking there, but he was just going there to attend, which is, of course, when he got there, Mr. Halper, the fat man, was waiting for him. And, of course, we know what was going on there. So there's another person who was approached, and they don't say it was Halper, but I think it's pretty safe to assume it was Halper, obviously, who contacted Stephen Miller, and this was back in May of 2016. Oh, you'll love this next one, if you haven't heard it. Laura Loomer was kicked out of a Bill Clinton book signing this morning when she approached Clinton and asked him the following. Are you concerned that you will ever be prosecuted for raping Juanita Broderick? Oh, man. I would love to have been there to have seen that. Oh, man, I hope she got it on video. I really do. I want to see that video. Are you concerned that you'll ever be prosecuted for raping Juanita Broderick? I can't remember what question it was that she asked Hillary, but she did the same thing to Hillary in a book signing. It was devastating. I forget exactly what it was, but it had something to do with the same topic but the flip of it, which is that Hillary, of course, was in charge of putting down the bimbos by sicking union thugs on them, and it had to do with that kind of a question, and I just love it. Yeah, got her kicked out of the book. Yeah, that'll get you kicked out of a Slick Willie book signing. Go up and ask him if he's concerned that he's going to be prosecuted for raping Juanita Broderick. Let's see. That's good. Not good that she was raped, of course. But I mean, that Laura Loomer is willing to go up and do that. That's just fantastic. Oh, it appears that there's a contractor who was wanted for attempted murder who was arrested at the White House. He did have a White House pass. He had been working as a contractor for the NSC, the National Security Council, and, of course, like I said, he had a White House pass. He is Martise Edwards. He's 29. He was arrested outside the White House by the Secret Service. He had an outstanding warrant for murder. Somebody should probably look into that, I think. Sarah Carter, of course, saying that lawmakers are warning that the IG is being pressured to slow walk and redact significant portions of the IG report. And of course, Trump was tweeting about that 2 or 3 times today himself. He thinks the DOJ is kind of rigging it. Well, here's what I have to say to that, Mr. President. I hope you're watching, or hopefully someone will pass this on to President Trump. My thoughts on the tweets and on the issue raised by Sarah Carter. Of course, yes, we know that we know that the DOJ is working overtime to redact, probably lose some pages, do everything that they can to delay and do everything they can to throw a wrench in the spokes of the process. But to you, Mr. President, I would say the following. Declassify the IG report. All 400 pages. Completely declassify the IG report. All 400 pages. There's nothing in there about national security. The individuals involved are not, working on some deep undercover operation for national security. Nothing like that. This is a bunch of hacks, ex-spooks, a bunch of private contractors contracted out by the CIA to orchestrate a coup d'etat. This was not a FBI investigation. This was not an investigation of any Russians or anything else. None of that was going on, Mr. President. Declassify all 400 pages of the IG report. Just declassify it. Be done with it. Get it out. It's all going to come out anyway. That's my thoughts on that. Well, are you ready for this one? If you're chewing something right now, if you're eating, I'll go ahead and give you a second to swallow before I tell you this next story, so you don't choke up your food. I don't want to cause anybody to asphyxiate. Alrighty. You ready? Here we go. Stephen Halper, the fat man, the agent provocateur who was planted into the Trump campaign to put up the frame up, the setup, lay out the setup for Papadopoulos. He's the one who gave the false intelligence on Flynn, Carter Page. He's been paid over $1 million over the past 6 years by the Pentagon. And we now learn today that Stephen Halper was arrested on crack cocaine charges back in 1994 and paid a $400 fine. Stephen Halper was a crackhead back in 1994. He may still be a crackhead. I don't know. He looks kind of crazy. He looks like he's been doing some heavy drinking or drugging or something. I don't know, but the man looks a little crazy. The fat man was arrested for possession of crack cocaine. Now, you would think, okay, now this is kind of a rich dude. He's living in Virginia. He's kind of a high roller, you would think, or he's running around with some, pretty elite people at that time. He's doing the rock. If I remember correctly, not that I have any personal experience, because I don't. I actually have never done crack or coke. I've never seen crack. If I saw crack, I wouldn't know what I was looking at, probably. But I can tell you that Mr. Halper, and I know the high society crowd, if I remember the argument back then, was that the penalties for powder cocaine were not nearly as bad as the penalties for rock cocaine, crack cocaine. And so they would make the argument that only so black kids were being thrown in prison for longer time periods because they were using the cheap stuff, the crack, the cheap version, and that the rich people would use the powder, the good stuff, and they would get less jail time. I think that's the argument that was being played back then. So it's just strange that he would be a crackhead, as opposed to snorting the powder or whatever, the higher end stuff with people who would run in those circles. So you got to wonder what circles he was running in. Do you think maybe Stephen Halper was getting his stuff from Mayor Barry, Marion Barry? Maybe. You remember him. He got caught with a prostitute smoking crack in a hotel room, the mayor of Washington, D.C. And then he got busted again. Got busted 2 or 3 times. Went to jail for crack cocaine use, dealing, the whole 9 yards. Maybe Stephen Halper was hanging out there in Washington with Mayor Barry, and maybe Sharpton and some of his buddies probably smoking up the crack and doing what they do, shaking down white people with money. So that is pretty much what we have there. Stephen Halper was a cokehead, a crackhead back in 1994. We all know what he's on now, but he's probably got some problems right now, would be my guess. Let's see. Oh, yeah, more Strzok and Page text. They're the hit that just keeps on and never stops hitting. They're great. Let's see. Peter's been stroking us, and loose Lisa Page. It appears that there's a text here where, again, Peter's been stroking us, tells Page about him handling this CHS, which, of course, is FBI lingo for confidential human source. So the confidential human source, here we have Strzok talking to Page about him handling the confidential human source. He only says one here. Maybe that's something totally different than the previous email. Who knows if he's talking about the same person or if he's talking about different people. He also, in this text here, talks about Operation Crossfire Hurricane, which, of course, we know was an operation that was the cover for the real operation, and its primary function was to obtain the FISA warrants, the national security letters, probably had something going on with still being able to get into that database. Initially they were, of course, using Confusion GPS to mine the database, but once Mike Rogers shut it down, and then that's when they got Nellie Orr and Bruce Orr involved. My guess is somewhere in that game we'll find possibly that Bruce Orr was one of the people who was involved with the 6-agency task force. If we do, then we'll know exactly. That'll answer another question and realize how that got pipelined in. So it's all coming together every day, just more bombs dropping. I mean, it's amazing. There's so much here. I cannot believe that Sessions has not appointed a special counsel. You cannot have the FBI and the DOJ investigating themselves. We can see right now, even if you have the IG gets his report done, he gives it who? To the DOJ. And they and the FBI get to sit around and decide what's going to be in the report or not be in the report. That's the way it's looking now. And if that's the game that we're playing here, is, oh yeah, we got the IG, he's going to do all this investigation. Oh, but then he's going to give it to the DOJ and the FBI, and they're going to edit that a bit, if you know what I mean. And redact a few things. No, this ain't going to work. There's overwhelming evidence now of a coup. There's no question that the multiple inconsistencies and statements between the players involved, the timeline does not fit at all. It's way off, telling us that the investigation didn't kick till July 31st, 2016 by the FBI, which is that maybe when that operation kicked off, but there was other operations going on long before that. We know now, going all the way back, we've known that this all went back to November 2015. We've known that for a year because that's when we learned about the illegal 702 queries. And so that was going on in 2015. Now we learned that here, December 28th, 2015, we've got Strzok and Page talking about getting approval for 3 spies. So, I mean, there's a lot of problems. And the only way, like I said, the DOJ and the FBI can't investigate themselves, and you can't use the IG because it's still the end person that gets to decide what we see is still the DOJ and the FBI. I mean, the only thing I can think of is, as I said, the president would just have to declassify the IG report completely. Just take the FBI and the DOJ completely out of it, declassify it, and put it out, and say the hell with it. That's what he should do. But they just need to get a special counsel who doesn't have to worry about any of those things. There needs to be grand juries. There needs to be, all these people need to be brought in and questioned. They need to testify in front of a grand jury under oath. They need to sort this out. It's not going away. It's too big of an issue. It's not going away. This was much more than just, what we're being told. And everyone's involved. It goes all the way up to the top. So, I believe we covered everything. Okay, good. Alrighty, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow, and we'll see what drops next. And hopefully tomorrow we'll get some real specific details, and I'm sure we will. Be a lot of leaks coming out of this about what they learned from Pre-Step. And we expect maybe the 11th, the IG report. And we'll see what it looks like. All right, see you guys tomorrow. Bye.